conversation with Mr. Sudhir Kakar and Professor Harish Trivedi, and today we're going to be discussing his latest novel called The Devil Take Love, which is based on Bhartrihari's Sanskrit poems from the Shatakatraya, which is a collection of 3 sections of 100 verses each. And, sorry, just a second. Sorry. Yeah, I could use that. Is that better? Let me just hold it up. That should work. Okay. Okay, so I'll start a little bit again. We're going to be discussing... Hello? Yeah, we're going to be discussing Sudhir Kakar's latest book called The Devil Take Love, which is based on Bhartrihari's Sanskrit poems from the Shatakatraya. As the name suggests, it's a collection of 3 sections of 100 verses each, which we're going to be talking about a little later. But as a short introduction, Mr. Sudhir Kakar is a distinguished psychoanalyst and novelist. He has written 18 books of fiction and 5 books of 18 books of non-fiction and 5 books of fiction. And he has won many awards, including Germany's Order of Merit. And today, as you know, we're here to discuss his latest novel, The Devil Take Love. Professor Harish Trivedi is a scholar of post-colonial studies and translation studies. He teaches English at Delhi University, has also translated Premchand's biography into English, and has also written a lot on Tagore, which we will also come back to later in the session. Moving on to the book called Devil Take Love actually opens at a day just like this, at a literature festival at the King's Court in 7th century Ujjain, where Sudhir Kakar has really brought alive cosmopolitan India in an ancient time, where we get a glimpse into the poet's mind, into the soul of ancient India, where we celebrate the festival dedicated to the god of love, Kamdev, and we meet kings and court poets and courtesans from 7th century Ujjain. So we're going to go into the book, but before that, I'm going to ask Professor Trivedi a more central question. Also, the conversation today is going to be bilingual, so I hope everyone's going to be okay with that. So we're going to keep switching between Hindi and English. So सवाल ये है कि भर्तृहरि आखिर थे कौन? There's a debate that there were many Bhartriharis. There's a grammarian. तो क्या वो व्याकरणविद थे जिन्होंने वाक्यपदीय की रचना की, या वो पहली सदी के उज्जैन के राजा थे जो विक्रम बेताल वाले विक्रमादित्य के बड़े भाई थे, या फिर वो महाकवि भर्तृहरि थे जिनके बारे में कक्कर जी ने नॉवल लिखी है? तो आपके हिसाब से हम आज उनके बारे में कितना जानते हैं, और क्या आप क्या बता सकते हैं उनके बारे में?
भर्तृहरि के बारे में हम लोग बहुत कम जानते हैं, और ये सुधीर के लिए बहुत अच्छी बात है क्योंकि अगर ये उपन्यास लिखना चाहते हैं भर्तृहरि के बारे में, a fiction writer does not need too much of life in detail. He only needs the essence. He only needs the feel of what he's going to write about. About Bhartrihari, there is not one Bhartrihari, but there are 2 Bhartriharis. Earlier, they were thought to be the same person. One was a grammarian and a philosopher. In Sanskrit, there is not much of a difference between grammar and philosophy. And he was supposed to be both. And the other one, he was also supposed to be a poet for some time. But now they have been contradistinguished. Now they believe to be 2 different persons. And Sudhir's novel is concerned with the poet. And Sudhir, conscious obviously of the controversy about whether there was one Bhartrihari or 2 Bhartriharis, has devised a very neat trick to get around that one in the novel. He says in the novel that the father of the poet Bhartrihari was a great admirer of the grammarian Bhartrihari, and therefore he named his son after the grammarian. So that's how he conflates the 2. As about what we know about the historical Bhartrihari, whether there was a real person or not, Sanskrit is a different universe. Now we think about dates, we think about history, we think about accuracy of detail. In Sanskrit, there are great debates even now which are not entirely settled about when Kalidasa lived and wrote. There are debates about whether Ashwaghosh came first or Kalidasa came first, who is acknowledging whom. And in Sanskrit, in our literary culture even now till the 20th or 21st century, we do not really put such a premium on accuracy. We feel that feeling is more important. we feel that the general impression is more important. There is the historical truth, there is the truth of legend, and there is the truth of mythology. And in Sanskrit, they are in that ascending order. The historical truth, the factual truth is at the bottom. The truth of legend is above that, and the truth of mythology, I think, absolutely above everything, because one may call it myth, but one believes it to be true. That, I think, is how we look on these things in Sanskrit. And I'm delighted, and I'm sure all of you who read this book will be, that the hazy historical figure of Bhartrihari, the poet, has now been given flesh and blood in this work of fiction by Sudhir.
It's interesting you say that grammarian and philosopher and poet is the same thing in Sanskrit, because you've actually written that the poet would hate a grammarian because a poet doesn't like to, not hate, but doesn't like to be bound by the rules of grammar, basically. But coming back to you and how you discovered Bhartrihari, you said that you heard your father, your father was a reader of Sanskrit poetry and Bhartrihari, and you discovered him at the age of 24 or 25. So what struck you about the poet, and why did it take so long also to write this book?
I don't know why it took so long. I mean but yes, I discovered Bhartrihari actually in Jaipur, because my father was in the Indian Administrative Service at that time, and he had just retired, and he thought he would become the chief secretary, but the chief minister of that time, I don't know if anyone remembers him, Mohanlal Sukhadia, asked him to favor the Birlas for some kind of electricity. He was chairman of electricity, and he refused. And he was shunted off to some posts, chairman of revenue or something. So he was a disappointed, I can take it off, yeah. So he was a disappointed man, and he used to look sad, and I once asked him of why he's looking sad. Let me see. So, then he quoted a Bhartrihari poem, which is, let me just, if I can find it, yeah. Wise men are consumed by greed, kings are defiled by haughty ways, the people suffer from ignorance, eloquence is withered on my tongue. And then he said, you should read Bhartrihari. He is the only Sanskrit poet with a modern sensibility. So that stayed with me, but it went down. And then suddenly, after 50 years, I'm glad I followed my father's advice and read Bhartrihari, unfortunately, in translation. And if coming to Bhartrihari, actually there are three Bhartriharis. One you said is very much so the historical Bhartrihari, who we don't know anything about. We know he lived between 3rd and 7th century, probably in Ujjaini. And then we know the legendary Bhartrihari, and there are three legends about him. The first is, of course, that he was the elder brother of another legendary king, Vikramaditya, and that he could not decide between erotic and spiritual life, and he went into the forest 7 times and came back 7 times. And also that he became the Gorakhnath sector, Shaivite. But why did he go away from leaving family life? There are 2 legends about that also. And those legends are, one is that he heard his wife saying once that she loves him so much that she will die if she lost him. So he said, I must test my wife. So he went into the forest and then sent his servant back with bloody clothes and said, a tiger had killed your husband, and the blood was of the antelope which he had killed. And the wife saw that and committed suicide. And after that, he was so unhappy and completely shattered that he went into the forest. The second legend is I think, the more interesting one, from where we'll later on come, where the title also comes from, that Bhartrihari got a mango from Karnataka. Karnataka used to be very famous for mangoes at that time in 7th century. And he gave this mango to his wife, who gave it to her lover, who gave it to his lover, a Ganika, who used to admire Bhartrihari, and who came back with the mango and gave it to him. And he recognized the mango and saw where it all came from, and he was so disappointed that he went into this. So that is the legendary Bhartrihari. The third is you want to maybe the fictional Bhartrihari, so my Bhartrihari. So you're right, I have made him the son of the chief scribe of Jalandhar, who named him after the grammarian Bhartrihari. But Bhartrihari, of course, says that like most poets, I dislike grammarians. They are but weeds in the garden of literature. So that he doesn't want to have anything to do with them. He gets education in poetics in Jalandhar, and then he goes to, after his father dies, as a young poet, he wants to make his name, and he goes to Ujjaini. Ujjaini was at that time the greatest city, or perhaps with Varanasi together, one of the greatest cities in the world. In fact, just like New York in America, they call the city Ujjaini. When they used to ask about Ujjaini, they didn't say Ujjaini, they said the Nagar. So it was known as the city. It was very famous for many things. Its 84 Shiva temples, but also its Kamdev temples, and that it was very famous for. And it was also very famous for that Kamdev Mahotsav, which they used to have, the great festival of Kamdev, which I think is what Holi comes from. Holi, I think, is that Kamdev festival. After that, they put the Holika legend, I think, is a later one. So Holi, I think, goes back to that Kamdev temple. And it also had a great university, which was famous for astronomy and medical science. And they used to say that the first philosophical advance is always announced from Varanasi, and the first astronomical, mathematical advance is announced from Ujjaini. So it was a very, very famous city. And so Bhartrihari comes to the Kamdev festival, where there is also a literary festival, a poetical festival for young poets, and competition. And he wants to enter that, and he enters that. And this is a very interesting poetical festival, because there are two problems to be given. So the first is given is, I think I'd look at that complete a verse where only the last line is given to you, and you have to make the verse. And so the last line which is given in that one is, 100 moons were in the sky. So that is the last line, and what is required is that you complete the verse, and what is required is bring out the rasa and the speed. So there are many poets, and the first three goes into the final one. So Bhartrihari completes this poem. Remember, 100 moons were in the sky. Ah, if the moon would cease to shine so fair, when we are far apart, my love and I, if he would only come, I should not care, although 100 moons were in the sky. So he wins this with this line and comes into the final. And the final part is that three people that compose a very short verse on what is the essence of poetry. What is the essence, what is the rasa of poetry? Bhartrihari is certainly the first to raise his hand, and this is his small verse. Only a fool waiting to be told suspends judgment. A poem, like an arrow, has met its mark only when the listener's senses reel as the poem sticks quivering in the heart. So he wins it with that one. So then he flourishes in the court, writes many erotic verses, and also then becomes the court poet. All his evenings are spent at, we call them brothels now, but they were veshas, very high-class brothels, with courtesans deluxe, ganikas, as we would call them, not just courtesan, but courtesan deluxe. And of course, he's very much women-like poets, which we know even now. So he has spends all his evenings there. That's all I would say. But then gradually he notices there's a feeling of satiation coming with women's body and with the erotic life. So, and then as he says, I'll just quote a small sentence. By day, I had relinquished my pride to fawn in futile servitude at Vikram Sen's court in pursuit of his favor. By night, I had roamed the brothels, trading in my reputation as the court poet, prostituting Saraswati's gift for the enjoyment of women's body. So he wants to write different kinds of poems now, as he says, fruits of calmness, not flowers of sensuous chaos. And there's dissatisfaction with court life, just 3 sentences there. The evening soirees at the palace became more and more distasteful, and I hated myself that I needed to dissemble in that boorish company. I smiled, flattered the king, and laughed with others at his witty remarks, which were essentially cruel. Cynicism is wit's twin, and as the men drank and gossiped, there was no virtue in any person that escaped their slander. So he wants to go away, and I won't go into the whole story because it has twists and turns, as it should, a fiction should. So what pulls him back is a woman's love. What joins him again to the wheel of samsara is a ganika. So that is, I won't go to the end and how it all turns out, but that we'll leave it for them. So that is the fictional Bhartrihari, which is in this novel.
I should explain that the three Shatakas from Shataktraya, the first one is called the Niti Shatak, which is about court and worldly life. The second one is Shringar Shatak, which is about erotic desire and love. And the last one is Vairagya Shatak, which is about renunciation and spirituality. So it really follows his life trajectory because fame and lust were the two things that drove him through his life, and he starts realizing the futility of it towards the end. So thank you for those readings. And can I request you to do some Sanskrit readings as well of his poetry before we go into a discussion of the themes in the novel? And so can we...
About the three Shatakas that you have talked about, you know, there is a natural tendency, even though there is not much historical evidence, for us to assume that there is a kind of chronological order to the three Shatakas. Shatak, of course, is a collection of 100 verses. It's not a century by a cricketer, which is the modern usage. Earlier, it was 1 century, 100 verses by a poet. There are 7 centuries, the poets also, Saptashati, and there are 100. In Bhartrihari's case, Sudhir is absolutely right to say that many people consider that he is the first modern voice in Sanskrit poetry. And this is because he has a personal voice. He has an identifiable personal voice and not a collective or classical voice, as, for example, in Kalidasa or even later writers like Bhavabhuti, who are the greatest, among the greatest writers in Sanskrit. But in Bhartrihari's case, if we say that it begins, the progression begins with the Niti Shatak, which is 100 verses on how to conduct oneself in the right way, moral advice and moral conclusions, that is perhaps how everybody should lead their lives. And then in the second stage, and this is not departing from Niti, it is according to Niti. The middle phase of one's life should be devoted to Shringara. As a grihast, one should follow kama. One should follow desire, including sexual desire, and fulfill it, and procreate, and that is part of life's purpose. And then there is the third stage of Vanaprastha, of withdrawing and going to a forest, and finally the fourth phase of sannyasa. And therefore, the Vairagya Shatak is supposed to be the third Shatak. Now, this is the pattern that all of us have in our minds as a kind of default, as a kind of blueprint that we have all grown up with, and trust Sudhir to muck it up. What Sudhir does is, this is the kind of Bhartrihari that I grew up with when I was a student at the University of Allahabad, reading Sanskrit as well as English. And in fact, one of the first articles I ever wrote, a short article, was on Bhartrihari, and another one of the two first articles, if I may put it that way, the other one was on Shakespeare. And I'm still a divided soul. But on Bhartrihari, what Sudhir does, and that's a point of interest. You know, first of all, let me comment on, Sudhir has given you the bare bones of the story up to a point without revealing the ending. We'll come to the ending in a little while, but I think some of the highlights of Sudhir's novel, and he does it extremely well, is how he describes Ujjaini. Ujjaini is the center of the world, so far as all Indians are concerned at that time. It's one of the great cities of the world. He compared it to New York. I think there was Manhattan in Ujjaini. Sorry, it's not. Can you hear me? No? Can I pull it up? How does it go on? Yeah. Is that better? Yeah, right. So Sudhir has called it, right. Sudhir has compared it to New York. Is that okay? Yeah, right. And I will also add that it was not only the Manhattan, Attalika, tall buildings, skyscrapers, according to those times, it was also the Paris of the old world. both together, the Parisian luxury and decadence, the Kamadeva as well. And Sudhir gets his Ujjaini absolutely right so far as we can make out. Of course, history doesn't help us there very much. It's all imagination. And imaginatively, his Ujjaini is one of the best depictions of that city that I have read. And let me go a step further. I think his Ujjaini is better than Kalidas's Ujjaini. Kalidas's Ujjaini is described by the Megha in Meghaduta, the cloud messenger. And the cloud messenger has to go to Alkapuri from Ramagiri in Madhya Pradesh. But Kalidasa is so fond of Ujjaini that he says, why don't you take a little detour, he says to the cloud. Even though his wife is waiting for the love message, he himself, the Yaksha says, take a little detour. Go fly over Ujjaini, the great city. But that is the bird's point of view, that is the cloud's point of view. His point of view is from the street, like a Google map. His point of view is the Ganika quarters, the courtesans' quarters. So his Ujjaini is much richer. Altogether, it also seems to me that his whole book, he cites about 20, 25 full shlokas by Bhartrihari and some by others. They stud the book throughout. But apart from that, the narrative style has a coloring that it takes from Sanskrit through osmosis. He may have read Sanskrit only in translation, but he's really soaked it up, it seems to me. And that's again one of the delights of it. I don't know, we'll perhaps get to the ending in a little while. We'll get to the ending of the novel towards the ending. Tell us, Mohini, when we have 10 minutes left, and then we'll go back to that. But meanwhile, let Sudhir tell you a bit more about it.
No, I think maybe you'd like to read the Sanskrit of the...
Read the title.
So the title. Where does the title come from? So I'll read in the English, and Harish will really give the sound to it. It's because Sanskrit is sound. Because poetry, Sanskrit said only should be spoken, not reading poetry. It has to be heard. So the title comes from this small one from Bhartrihari. She who I'm always thinking of has no interest in me. She desires another man whose devotion is for one other than her. And for me, some poor girl pines. Damn it all then, the devil take her and him, the devil take love, and also her and me.
Yeah, now for the sound effect. I'll say that in Sanskrit. Yam jintayami satatam maisa virakta, sapyanya michyati janam sajanunya saktaha. That's a poetic translation. The literal translation would be, she whom I desire covets another man. That man desires another woman, and that woman longs for yet another man. Asmat krite tu paritushyati kachidanya. There is a woman who also longs for me. I'm not left alone. There is a woman who asmat krite tu paritushyati kachidanya. And the punchline, dik tam cha madanam cha imam cha mam cha. Damn that woman, damn that man, damn this woman, damn this man, damn Kamadeva who causes all the trouble, the god of love, and damn me. Dik tam cha madanam cha imam cha mam cha.
Thank you.
On behalf of Bhartrihari, thank you.
Let me perhaps also read, according to me, the last poem Bhartrihari wrote, not according, as you said, to many scholars who divide it into niti, etc., etc. And maybe you can read that one also. But for this poem, I have to give a small context, which I will do the context. These are the last lines of the book. I stand naked before the long polished copper mirror in our bedroom and see my lined face, my head marked with gray. Age has ripened my flesh that grows softer as the body unhinges itself. My limbs have become feeble, but my craving alone has kept its youth. For so many years, my body has trudged on under the burden of desire that has been my torture and my God. As the body aged, Kama merely shifted his residence to my imagination. I sometimes worried about the effect that my self-chosen exile from the realm of Kama had on my poetry. I worried whether the spirit of Vairagya had so taken over my imagination that my verses were more of a philosopher's than a poet's. Now I know that no one can renounce the life of desire, and anyone who believes he has done so is under the sway of the most obstinate of all illusions which govern human life. The lure of the senses will never let a man go, a fish flailing on their hook. All my learning has been shallow. I carry the same baffled heart from my youth, except that it has now less joy, is more battered. I sit down at my desk and write my last verse. Feeble, blinded, lamed, ears and tail cut off, covered in wounds, pus sores flowing, body crawling with worms, starving, shriveled, neck garlanded with an elm's port shroud, a dog will still follow a bitch. Lust swats even those already dead. I do not know if the poem is any good. There's no one I can recite it to. Ananga is not here. Forsaken by my lover as by my life, already a member of the living dead, the memories of my triumphs fallen into life's abyss, my flame gutted out, I marvel at my body's boldness that it can still fear the final blow of death. Like trees on the frail sandbank of a river awaiting the flood, I await death's imminent call.
Right.
The poem.
Yeah.
No.
Sudhir just said after reciting that last stanza, what he says is the last stanza written by Bhartrihari, that Bhartrihari doesn't know whether anyone would like that. Well, I don't like it. So I don't have it by heart. I'll have to read it out. Krishah Kanah Khanjah Shravana Rahitah Puchha Vikalo. And those of you who know Hindi, who know any modern Indian language, would be able to make up. People think they don't know Sanskrit, and everybody thinks they know Urdu, and they are wrong on both counts. Now, the Sanskrit is very easy. Krisha is the word used for slimness, for emaciate, for somebody emaciated in many languages. Kana is kana, blind of one eye. Khanja is ganja, without hair. That's how simple it is. Krisha, Kana, Khanja, Shravana Rahita. Somebody who cannot hear is without hearing. Shravana Rahita. Puchha Vikalaha. Puchha is poonch. We are describing a dog here. So he's even lost his tail, or his tail is between his legs where one can't see it. So, Puchha Vikalo. Vrini Puya Klinnaha. Krimikula Shataiha Avrita Tanuhu. Shudha Kshamo Jirnaha. Pitaraja Kapalar Pitagalaha. Shuni Manvetishwa Hatamapi Nihanteva Madanaha. The dog still runs after a bitch. Kamadeva kills those who are already dead.
Thank you. In fact, like you said, you've described Ujjain so beautifully. You also say that when you're writing a fictional character, you need to have the context right. So I wanted to ask you how you balance that history and fiction, because the journey that you take us on really transports us to Ujjain, but you still manage to sort of, I mean, it is a fictional imagination of Bhartrihari, so.
I think the more imaginary the character, the more the context has to be, has as many facts possible as to, so that it is, that otherwise the character flies and is not grounded. So to have a character which is flying but also grounded, you need the context. So you need, of course, to do a lot of research. And of course, some things you add on. Now, I'm not quite sure whether the Poetry Festival really happened in the same way as I describe it there, but it happened somewhere else at the similar time, so I've shifted it to come. So there's something, these kind of shifts you do from here to there. But if you're asking about what else about biographies, you would think?
Where you got the history from, how much of your Bhartrihari is in this book? And how much
I think the Bhartrihari is very much in the book through his poems. So my Bhartrihari is only through the poems, because as we said, we don't know about the Bhartrihari at all. He's such a historical ghost. So how the poems brought Bhartrihari alive in me is the one which I've tried then to reproduce in the book.
And I mean, his defining dilemma is the spirituality versus sensuality kind of dilemma, which you've really played on. And
yeah, I think this is also the dilemma, while not a dilemma, but what is called the dilemma of modernity, of giving that much importance both to the sensuous, to the calm, as much to the spiritual. And what makes Bhartrihari very interesting is that he also does the same thing. In fact, he says in one of the poems that a wise person has only two things which he should pay attention to: eros, erotic, or the spiritual. He, of course, puts it in very concrete terms: women's bodies or forest. I mean, that is what Bhartrihari says in one of his poems too.
And going back to what you were saying about the poet and how Bhartrihari's poetry really has a personal voice, it's interesting because in the book there's a section where your Bhartrihari says that a poet is a good poet only when you put your personal feelings but you make it universal. And in fact, he says women poets can't do that, which I was wondering about. So do you think Bhartrihari manages this, and what do you feel about that?
You know, about what Sudhir was just saying about, there being just two options in life, either a woman's body or the forest. There is a verse by Bhartrihari which conflates the two. And it's the title. I've just got to know recently, I did not know it before, or else I would have read it before I came here. There is a novel in Hindi also on Bhartrihari, and that is titled Kamini Kaya Kantari, which is a bit of a verse from Sanskrit, from Bhartrihari, which actually it goes fine in Hindi because there's not such a gap. People understand what it is. And it's a short shloka, and it says, Kamini Kaya Kantare Kuch Parvat Durgame Ma Sanchar Manah Pantha Tatra Vicharanti Taskara. And it means, in the forest, that is the woman's body. That's the metaphor. My heart, do not ever venture into the forest, that is the woman's body, because there you will find mountains hard to climb, and you will find thieves roaming about who will rob you of all your senses. So that's Kamini Kaya Kantari. This duality is there throughout Bhartrihari, so that very often you cannot tell whether a particular verse is from the Shringara Shatak or the Vairagya Shatak. That's the duality.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I think this is what makes Bhartrihari so contemporary. What is modernity actually? Is a feeling, awareness of conflict. That we are conflicted, that it's not the same one that we go on that one path, but there are conflicts, there are problems on the way, and Bhartrihari is very much of, here is my conflicts right up in the poems.
Yeah, and that way, there are a lot of things which we can still relate to, the moral dilemmas or all these kinds of things. So in fact, about that, I want to ask both of you, since you both have written on historical figures, whether popular or less known like Bhartrihari among some people, how do you decide your technique? So there are some people who put, say, a historical figure into the contemporary time. There are some who bring alive an ancient time like you have done in this novel. So what do you think works better to engage a contemporary audience?
Should I go on first? Pehle aap. I think if you're asking also generally of biographies and not only fictional ones, of what brings a biography to life, I can give you my take on it. Now, most biographies are from a third-person perspective, which has, I think, inherent limitations. A film crew filming every moment of a person's life will get the facts of life, but not how the person experienced them. So the first-person perspective which is the subjective experience of the intimacies, embarrassments, hopes and fears, the small events, these are very, very low in the most biographies which we read. So that is the point of it. So the subject of a historical biography can come through as great in achievements, but not as a person of flesh and blood, as we know from us, our own inner lives. I would like to quote Mark Twain here. I mean, what is life actually? What brings, not only what brings life, but what is life? So he says, what a wee little part of a person's life are his acts and his words. His real life is led in his head and is known to none but himself. All day long and every day, the mill of his brain is grinding, and his thoughts, which are but the mute articulation of his feelings, not those other things, are his history. His acts and his words are merely the visible thin crust of his world, with its scattered snow summits and its vacant wastes of water, and they are so trifling a part of his bulk, a mere skin enveloping it. The mass of him is hidden. It and its volcanic fires that toss and boil and never rest, night nor day. These are his life, and they are not written and cannot be written. So to me, a biography comes to life only if something of the hidden part of the person is revealed. Not in events, but in the subject's reactions and feelings about the events. And very few biographies capture at least some of this first-person perspective. In literary biographies, I can think of Ellman's Joyce and David Lodge.
James.
H.G. Wells.
Yeah, right.
But
H.G.
also,
Wells
but
is
James
also
are
James,
also
yeah,
right.
right.
And modern, I think Patrick French, Naipaul does that. Some of the comes out. It doesn't have to be written in the first-person perspective, but only the first-person perspective should come out a little. And what I'm reading just now, Charles Allen's biography of young Kipling, I think there also
yes, of course.
it comes out. So why do we find so many biographies, all those biographies of Gandhi, Nehru, etc., unsatisfactory? At least I do. Or at least because in modern times, the idea of life has changed. So life is not the outer life as much. Yes, it is, but that is the unimportant part of it. But the inner life, and how we do this, explore this unexplored continent. So any biography which gives just a hint, or of this, not a hint, but a little more of that, is to me a successful biography. The others are, yes, I read them maybe for the voyeuristic part of it, of who was Gandhi trying to do, kind of the sexual things, etc. But those are not the interesting part, at least for me.
You know, about biography, there's a new genre that has developed, which is, I suppose, what Sudhir writes in many of his books, biofiction. It's not biography, it's biofiction. And therefore, it suits his purpose very well that he writes not only about historical figures, his last book was about Tagore, actually, where you are likely to offend everybody, all the Bengalis anyhow, if you put one step wrong. And still, he dared and went into the lion's mouth, and he did a wonderful job. Even in Calcutta, they like it. It's being translated into Bengali. But he's also written biofiction about Vatsyayana, for example, the author of the Kama Sutra. And here too, one of the delights of this book, even more so than in the Vatsyayana biography, are the erotic passages. And in fact, one of the reviewers of this book on Bhartrihari by Sudhir said it was quite a feat for him to have accomplished the depiction sensitively and delicately of erotica in our age of pornography. I think that's one of the great achievements of the book. This is also meant to send you rushing to the bookshop. But one thing about biography, suppose you write a biofiction about Jawaharlal Nehru, and at the end you say he died in London in Edwina Mountbatten's arms. There will be some trouble. Now, similarly, what you do here, it shattered my image of Bhartrihari completely. And I think we should mention perhaps the ending. Now I have two, as he said, there are three Bhartriharis. So I had one Bhartrihari that I grew up with, now I have another one from his novel. What happens in the end? There is no Vairagya. After all the Shringar that he has consumed, there is no Vairagya. He goes to Vairagya, and this is, his first reputation was as a psychoanalyst. He says he went through, after satiety, after having fulfilled himself with erotic desire and fulfillment of it, Bhartrihari went through 2 years of sadness. He doesn't call it depression, no, 2 years of sadness. After that, there's no more Vairagya, no more disenchantment. Actually, one of the last tasks he is given in the novel is to tutor the princes in poetics and how to write poetry, that art of poetry. And the princess is a very lively girl, 13, 14. And at the end, if I may spill the beans, Bhartrihari touches her inappropriately, as we say now under the new rape laws. And on the last pages of the novel, he is fearing that he will be arrested and he might even be put to death. So he denies him Vairagya, and it marks the triumph of erotic desire, which will break through however much of a Vairagi you may want to become. And this is again, I think, and psychoanalytical understanding or psychological understanding of human beings. And as I said, there are still two endings. One is the legendary mythological ending that I grew up with, in which he says Shiva, Shiva, Shiva. And reciting Shiva, he casts off the human body and goes straight to heaven. And the other, he goes to prison because he has done something with the princess that he should not have. That's the philosophy of love, and two takes on it, one traditional and the other very modern and original by Sudhir.
And you have your choice, whichever you want to take.
There are some twists and turns still, so you all should still get the book anyway. But I'm going to move to the audience now. Please identify yourselves, and if there's a particular person you want to address, please point that out. And again, just let's keep it to questions, please. There's a question behind that.
Hi, I am Abdullah Khan. Sir, when your Aesthetic of Desire was published, we purchased it from different intention. That time I was quite young, but then come to know about the Bhartrihari. I'm very much interested in his poetry, especially his influence on Allama Iqbal. फूल से कट सकता है हीरे का जिगर मर्द नादा पे कलाम नर्म नाजुक बेसर. This is inspired by Bhartrihari, and then Javed Nama, the book of eternity that Iqbal wrote. Passage is about...
Can you bring the mic a little closer?
Hello?
Yeah,
Yeah,
better.
now.
In fact, I was relating Bhartrihari to Allama Iqbal, the famous couplet, फूल से कट सकता है हीरे का जिगर मर्द नादा पे कलाम नर्म नाजुक बेअसर, and then the Javed Nama, the book of eternity, where Iqbal goes to paradise and he interacts with Bhartrihari. My question basically is about why Bhartrihari is not as well known as Kalidas or some other ancient poets or who has written. Plus one more thing, sir was talking about, Harish ji was talking about the women body. So my take is different. I look at Bhartrihari some sort of Sufi kind of thing. When he talks about the celibacy, he's making mockery of those people who are accepting celibacy because he will be rewarded in the heaven. So he says, friend, you are observing celibacy because you will get a virgin in the paradise. Similar way, those people who are offering namaz or doing some kind of prayer to get a virgin in the paradise. So Sufis generally say, worship God for the sake of love. My question is why Bhartrihari is not as well known as other poets. For example, Kalidas, even Shudrak.
Well, now he might be, after this novel. He may be better known if you go and read it. In English, I don't think there are any novels about Kalidasa. In the Indian languages, there are many, many plays and modern narrative reinterpretations, including Ashar Ka Ek Din by Mohan Rakesh. So, but you know, this is a dilemma. This is not only a dilemma, this is one of the ongoing crises of a man's life. It's not only God against women. Women might win that one quite easily in the present times, because faith in God has declined and women have retained in Sanskrit fatal attraction, also in Hollywood. But you know, the question remains: can one renounce the world, even though one doesn't want to wish to go to God or to moksha? Can one tame one's desire as one grows older? Does one get wiser? Can one, if that is wisdom? The questions all the way. We'll have Sudhir again talking about it, but if I may, let me bring in just one more verse from Bhartrihari that I'm very fond of, which is about the philosophy of love and the philosophy of life. He says, Bhoga na bhukta vayameva bhukta. We did not consume, it's we who were consumed. Bhoga na bhukta vayameva bhukta. Tapo na taptam vayameva tapta. We did not scorch desire, we ourselves were scorched. Trishna na jirna vayameva jirna. Our thirst for worldly pleasures did not wither. It is we who withered. And the last line of this verse, Kalo na yato vayameva yata. Time did not pass. It's we ourselves who passed.
That's beautiful.
Now that's the kind of understanding of life that he brings to so many of his verses throughout the three Shatakas. And it seems to me that this does not mean that he was not liable to temptation in this ding-dong of attraction and renunciation throughout his life, but a novelist reinterpreting the life and the works has to go one way or the other. And Sudhir has gone the unconventional way, as I said. Sudhir has gone the harder way. You know, once I asked him earlier when we were talking about this, he's the wonderful character that he's created, Bhartrihari, in this novel. And towards the end, it seems he doesn't really like him. He sends him to jail.
As a second question.
I'm Dr. Kailash Gupta. I don't know whether you remember me, but I was your student 46 years ago in at IIM Ahmedabad in 1969.
I see.
And after doing my BE Electrical from MNIT, I joined there. And that was the first term. Second month, you were teaching Organizational Behavior 1. And one of the assignment was to write self-analysis, a term paper, which I have got. So this is a 43-page self-analysis paper. And now I think, just after, engineers don't write. So how I could write 43 pages that time in a month after joining IIM Ahmedabad? Anyway, and after 42 years, I completed my PhD from University of North Texas 3 years ago. And currently I am a disaster management partner of this organization, JLF. Okay, my question is, as a psychoanalyst, I want to, after reading, during the first time when I was a student, after reading, you told me that there are no feelings in this. And I needed some help. Okay. and I did go to BM Institute in Ahmedabad.
Oh my God.
But they refused to help me. Because they said that I'm not a fit case for them. I'm functioning and they only treat schizophrenics. So maybe I was near that anyway. So my question is, I want to give this to you and I request you to read and do your psychoanalysis and give me feedback confidentially.
That's work for you. Should we? I think we can take it from. Thank you so much. That's very special.
I think I haven't had that kind of a response ever. 46 years, but I'm so glad that you turned out so well. So, and if I told you at that time to go somewhere, you must excuse me, I was a young psychologist. I didn't know psychoanalysis at all. I thought I knew it. I still think I know it, but I could be still wrong. So you have to excuse me for that one. But thank you very much for it. And feelings, yes, I mean, that I've just said, I mean, feelings, I think emotional life is a very, very important life. I think that is the only life one should have, or we should have, but that is my psychoanalytic predilection. But again, I'm not going to comment on it psychoanalytically. That privately. Yeah. You mean, as a psychoanalyst, I've also learned to charge fees. You mean without fee at all?
Thank you. Okay, sorry, we should move on to the next question. Thank you.
Okay.
Do we have?
What are the parallels or differences between the character of Siddharth in his novel, Siddharth and Bhartrihari?
Siddharth?
By Hermann Hesse.
Sorry.
Hermann Hesse.
Hermann Hesse.
Siddharth.
Could you just describe that a little bit, because I'm not sure.
No, only if they know about it. Otherwise
Okay,
you can skip
yeah,
that.
maybe not. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
and that's okay.
Okay, thank you. That's
मैं राजस्थानी का लेखक हूँ देवल, और हरीश जी से एक बात पूछ रहा था। आपने जो अभी जो श्लोक सुनाया, ठीक इसी तरह की मेरे राजस्थानी की ओल्ड राइटिंग्स में भी ऐसा आता है कि नर जाने दिन जाए है, दिन जाने नर जाए। दिन सोचता है, समय सोचता है कि वो जा रहा है, वो ठीक है। आपसे मैं एक बात जानना चाहता हूँ कि उनके जो तीनों शतक हैं, उसमें से आप कौन से शतक को पढ़ने की सिफारिश करेंगे, वैराग्य की या उसकी या उसकी?
देवल जी, ये बिल्कुल सही कहा आपने कि हमारी भाषाओं में संस्कृत का कितना छन कर स्वतः चला आता है, और जिसको हम लोग फोक कहते हैं कि जन साधारण की उक्तियां हैं, वो भी छन के आती हैं संस्कृत से। कई बार लोक तो संस्कृत में प्रवेश पाता ही रहा है, लेकिन संस्कृत ने भी इतनी व्याप्ति पाई है लोक जीवन में कि बताना बड़ा मुश्किल हो जाता है कि क्या चीज कहाँ से शुरू हुई। तो आपने जो उदाहरण दिया वो बिल्कुल सही है, उसी प्रकार की बात है। जहाँ तक 3 शतकों की बात है, मैं उसके कई जवाब हो सकते हैं। एक ये है कि अभी तो मैं जवान हूँ तो श्रृंगार शतक सबसे अच्छा है। एक और है कि अब कब तक जवान रहूंगा तो वैराग्य शतक की ओर बढ़ना चाहिए। और तीसरा ये है कि नीति शतक भी बुरा नहीं है। तो मैं चाहता हूँ, what I'll really like all of you to do is to read this book and let this be the gateway for you to discover for yourselves this great Sanskrit poet, this unique Sanskrit poet who is available in Hindi translation, in English translation, and I'm sure in translation into many European languages. Pick your translation. This Bhartrihari is the third Bhartrihari. There are 2 other Bhartriharis before. And if this session rouses your interest in any versions of the Bhartrihari, beginning of course with this one, let me remind you, it's very erotic. It'll be very good.
I think we'll have to wrap up.
And Harish is not getting any commission at all.
Only the joy of reading it.
Thank you so much, Sudhir ji, for introducing us to this fascinating character. I'm sure we've all gone back a little more knowledgeable about this today, and I really hope that you all will pick up the book and make your own interpretation of it. Thank you.
We wish to thank our speakers, Sudhir Kakar, Harish Trivedi, and Mohini Gupta ji for this session, and also Dainik Bhaskar Bhasha series for sponsoring this session. We begin our next session at 11:10. A quick few house rules. Keep your phone on silent mode, please, and still you need to use it. Please go outside the venue so that we do not disturb the session. Do not litter. There are waste paper baskets all over the venue. Please use them and let's keep the venue clean. Please do not leave your bags unattended. It will be difficult for us to look after any of it.